Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here with us today to talk about how small companies and startups can punch above their weight, have a big impact in cyber. My name is Arianne Price. I'm the COO of Secura. We're an early stage startup based in Baltimore that builds software to automate the customization and enforcement of technical security policies at the infrastructure level. We seek to bridge the gap between security and IT engineering teams. And I'm excited to host this panel today on behalf of Squadra Ventures, one of our investors, early stage VC fund also in Baltimore, focused on investing in national security and cybersecurity startups and really adding value beyond the check. I'm joined by some awesome panelists from the cyber industry, a variety of backgrounds. And today the goals are really to get a sense of what helps small companies be successful in selling to large customers, be that enterprise or government, how vendors can avoid the temptation to do everything and try to be everything to everyone, and really get clear on their value prop and the offering to build credibility, leverage partnerships, and close big deals and win big. So to start, I'm going to ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves, share a little bit about their background and what they're doing right now and how they ended up there. So first, we'll start with Stacey.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacey Page. I was recently the president and chief growth officer at a mid-tier national security cloud technology company. We were solving kind of many of the problems we're going to talk about today. So both the challenges and the opportunities that being kind of a mid-tier creates. I'm intimately familiar with that. Before that, I was at SAIC for 27 years, right out of college in a variety of roles. Started off as a program manager, line, and then ended up running business development for a sector of the company. I left SAIC, it was really kind of Leidos at the time. So those of you who are familiar, it broke into two companies. I left Leidos to join Task. Task became Agility, and Agility got bought by SAIC. So I was back at SAIC. And my last 3 years at SAIC, I led all of Intel for the company except for the NRO. And I'm super excited to be here. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Stacey. Kate.
All right. I actually started my career in the commercial industry, of all things, in a medical informatics company, high software development applications, things of that nature. I pivoted to the defense industry probably 10 years ago now. I don't want to age myself too much, but I still feel like I'm relatively newish, considering some of my counterparts. But I did start off at Task. That's actually how I originally met Stacey. That got bought by Agility. I then went over to KeyW, who got acquired by Jacobs. I then went to Next Century, a mid-tier, who got recently bought up by CACI. And now I'm with Onyx Point, a mid-tier company, primarily focused in the Intel industry.
Awesome. Vicky.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm Vicky Ames. Currently, I'm the Director of Security Risk and Compliance here at United Therapeutics. We're a small pharmaceutical company based in Silver Spring, Maryland, trying to solve the problem of the dearth of transplantable organs. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years. Very much focused in on the healthcare sector. So I've worked at the National Institutes of Health. I've worked at MedImmune, AstraZeneca, and spent most of my career doing that either as an employee or through my own consulting firm. So been kicking around doing a lot of what I'm sure you all have been doing for some time. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great. And finally, Puja.
Good morning. My name is Puja Shah. I actually started my career as a computer programmer at Verizon Communications, which was Bell Atlantic at that time. I was a mainframe programmer. And then from there, I actually ended up at Booz Allen Hamilton doing PKI implementations for the Air Force. 10 years into that, I just decided to form my own consulting firm, Resolute Solutions Consulting. And we've been around since 2009, primarily supporting the FAA, some clients in the Intel community, but our background's basically independent verification, validation, assessments.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. So as we can see, we've got a great representation of government, commercial, large, small. I'm really excited for this conversation and everyone's getting to benefit from everyone's expertise and experiences. So to start, we're here as part of Cyber Week, hosted by CyberScoop with cyber companies, cyber. It's this word that certainly in all of our careers, but also just broadly is such a buzzword, which is good because people should think about cyber security and best practices, but it also can be a problem because it's like, what does it even mean? So would love to actually start with some definitions from different folks based on the way you view it. I'd like to start with Puja. How do you define cyber, and how should companies in the space use specificity around that definition to articulate really what cybersecurity means?
So for me, this was actually a really good question, because I'm like, when I'm saying that, hey, I'm doing cybersecurity, especially coming from like a programming background, I'm like, what exactly is cyber? And so, so to me, what I've seen in my short career in cybersecurity is that it's a part of what we're doing with IT, people, infrastructure. It's an aspect of that. And it's kind of embedded into it nowadays, especially with all the different trends going on. But I would just say it's a characteristic.
Great, thanks. Vicky, you're on sort of a slightly different side, and you're not trying to sell cyber to anyone. You're trying to achieve security at this point, but I know you have in the past. As someone who probably gets pitched to a lot about cyber tools and services, how do you define cybersecurity, and how would you like to hear companies articulate it?
It's great. I do get a lot of pitches. The thing that resonates with me mostly is that cybersecurity is really about bringing a specific set of expertise to bear to help enable business leaders make well-informed, risk-based decisions about how IT supports their business objectives. So when folks are pitching to me, I love to know that they've done a little research on my company, that they know a little bit about how we do our business. I mentioned before that we're trying to solve this problem, and we have 5 or 6 things that are in the pipeline. That's all available out on our website. You can look that up. And if you come to me and you start talking to me about things that we are doing, you start talking to me in business terms and how the product that you're pitching to me will solve what you think might be a problem that I have, that'd be great. But even better, spend 5 minutes asking me what my problems are, and then figure out what you have to deliver, how that will help me achieve what I say is a goal.
Awesome. Thanks, Vicky. That segues nicely into our next question, which I'm going to direct at Kate. I know you have strong feelings about this. When cyber companies are selling, be they product or services, how should they think about defining their offering and their identity in sort of this broad, murky space?
Well, I think you can break it down pretty simply. Be known for something, and that something can be 1,000 different flavors of 1,000 different things. But I'll just share, kind of my experience in industry. If I have a small company coming to pitch to me or to get on one of my teams or something to that effect, and they say, "Oh, we're great systems engineers and we're software engineers, and I even have technical writers and I have a couple of analysts, and we're experts across all of these disciplines." Inevitably, my next question is, well, how big's your company? And when people have 5 disciplines with 3 employees, I really don't think that is a focus company, and I don't think that they are bringing something in particular to bear. So I think if you are good at something and known for something, I think that puts you in a really incredible spot to be more successful than just kind of the wishy-washy, I'll say, small companies who try to be everything to everyone at all times. So do one thing, do it well.
Yeah, I think it's tempting when you're in the pitch meeting or building your slide deck to want to say every problem you have, we're going to solve it, which is simply untrue. But there's probably one problem that you can solve, but you're losing the opportunity to do that.
And I do like what was said earlier, do your homework. I don't need to know about different portions of your company, depending on what type of meeting it is. So I think it is important, depending on your audience, to prepare for that particular problem or for that particular subject area. I think that really goes a long way, because nobody likes their time wasted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's relevant, I was reflecting as I listened to everyone's intros, everyone worked somewhere that got bought by somewhere, somewhere that got bought by somewhere, Stacey, I'm curious if you have thoughts around this in defining your value prop and your identity, not just for landing deals, but potentially even for being acquired or becoming part of a larger organization.
Well, so I think Kate kind of hit it on the nose, right? Is you have to stay focused, right? If you want to be, have a value prop, you have to define what it is you're doing. Okay. So, to her point, you can't have 10 people in your company and say you do 100 things. No one is going to believe that. So you also have to have a story around why do you have this passion, right? How does it relate to your customer? How does it relate to the person who's going in? Why did you pick this domain expertise? So you have a focus in a domain. You should have a focus in a customer, right? For your identity and for your value prop. What problem are you trying to go out there and solve? Because you can't solve them all. So get specific, get focused. And, as you start taking down the market, you can start, unboxing it, right? Moving over and start taking down more. The other thing you should think about is what is your product or solution differentiation? So, the customer and larges are looking to small businesses to come in and be that differentiation for them. And so you need to be very focused on, the domain. But if you can bring in a solution or a product these days, a product is, kind of, if you're going to try to sell yourself, I'm going to be honest, is really attractive. So you should get very focused on what it is you're trying to build. So, product differentiation, domain expertise, and customer focus, right? So I think you have to stay focused in those three areas and get it defined. And then, like I said, have a passion for it. Don't forget the mission you're trying to solve. So make sure you have that story there too.
And I just want to pile on to that a little bit. You tweaked something in my brain, Stacey. I think one of the big downfalls small businesses in particular fail to do well is really evaluate your competition. And that can be large businesses, that can be small businesses. But if there is a gap, right, in your competition, fill that gap. And I think small businesses don't think to do that quite often. They're looking to keep pace and keep up versus looking strategically across the market and their competitors and go, okay, this is an actual need. And I know nobody does that today, and latch onto that and run with it.
Yeah.
And just being a small business myself, I realized one thing is when you're, let's say a one-person company or two, like just you have to come in and you cannot say that you do everything because you look like a fool sometimes. You kind of need to specialize and really become the expert in that field, as you guys were saying. And I feel like sometimes small companies come in and they say this big story, like myself, like, okay, I do cybersecurity. What does that mean? Well, I'm only in one area of cybersecurity, but I can bring the experts in that can give you that service that you're looking for. But again, going off of what Vicky was saying as well, is that researching the companies and understanding what they're looking for, what their goals are, or what they do. And I often see that is that when I go to a lot of these conferences, people go and be like, hey, I'm going to talk to this person. They're like, oh, I do this, I do that. And I'm like, really? How do you do it when you're just one person? Because I can't do it.
I just, my last thing, is to say, it's okay to say, I don't do that. I don't do that, right? It's okay to say I'm an expert here, but I'm not an expert there. I learned that from a mentor is sometimes when you don't know something, it's actually smarter to say you don't know, right? Or that you can't solve that problem, because people will respect the honesty and they'll want to come back to you because they'll say, oh, when she says she's an expert in this, she truly is. She's just not trying to, kind of pull the wool over her eyes. So sometimes it's best to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in this meeting. You're asking for this. I can't fulfill that. Maybe I can bring a partner in. I can show you someone who can show you the way, but you build a lot of trust and confidence when you're working with people, sometimes by saying you can't do something instead of saying you can do everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Just one last note. We're talking a lot about how we want to target our approaches and our pitches, but we talked a little bit about doing the research of the organization. By all means, don't try to sell to everyone. Don't go after all the companies. Select your appropriate targets and select the places that you know that you can provide some kind of niche value, or work with your partners to help identify where you can be brought in with a high likelihood of success. Work smart and make sure that when you get in there, you have the opportunity that it really has a higher likelihood or probability of translating into business, as opposed to just kind of looking for business everywhere. If you can nail things down and understand what your offering is and what that will do for specific businesses, then you're much more likely to capture.
And I do want to tug on something, because we hear a lot of have a niche capability, productize something, right? I think small businesses can also be known for different things, meaning maybe they're excellent staffers, right? So you win a contract and you have them on your team, and you can always reliably know that they're going to bring 10 great employees, right? So maybe that's their niche. And I think we have to think a little bit differently about what reputation is, not just insofar as products, right? But also kind of the intangibles of what different small businesses are known for too. I can tell you some of the most impressive small companies are those who showed up during the proposal phase and really put their all into the collective effort. And again, I'll go back to when we were transitioning, those who really delivered the people, not just said they would. So I think those are the other kinds of intangibles that if there are small businesses listening and you go, oh my gosh, I don't have a product. Oh my gosh, I don't have the best experts in X, Y, and Z area. There are other ways to really get credibility and recognition throughout the intel industry in particular. And I don't know if it's still the same in the commercial, but.
Yeah, to tug on that, how would you advise, a small business or a startup or something so early that it's just an idea? How would you advise those companies to really get at what their strength is? Like, how do you know?
Gosh, I might have to phone a friend on this one. That's a big question. Well, I can give you an example. When I first started at Onyx Point, if you kind of look at the collection of people that make up the company, you will find pockets, areas, if not the majority of people residing in a particular area. So for instance, when I looked across, Onyx Point, we are a systems engineering firm at the core. Does that mean we don't have, a technical writer on staff? Well, sure we do, but our core and our value is in our systems engineering. And then secondarily, kind of on top of that is the compliance and security piece of it. But I think you need to back to earlier, Stacey's earlier point too, why did you start the company? What about the mission excited you? And I think you can find your identity if you really were thoughtful about those things in particular when creating the company. Not just a bunch of fraternity boys sitting around going, we're going to start our own company because, remember Joey, he did it. So that means we can do it too. I think you have to have a passion in what you do. And I think you'll find it in the company and the people that you have surrounded yourself with, even if it's only 5.
Yeah, great. I think based on your backgrounds, you've all in different ways sat on the buyer and the seller side. I think Vicky, right now, you're squarely in the buyer side and what we're talking about. Can you talk about what hesitations companies might have about working with small companies and startups as vendors, and how those smaller vendors can sort of spin that and make their small size and early stage a strength that makes you excited about working with them instead of nervous?
Absolutely. Somebody hit on this earlier about, delivery, right? So that my biggest concern is, sure, you're sitting here talking to me. I want to make sure that you're being straight and honest with me about what you can and can't do. And if I sense that you're not, I'm going to be a little bit more concerned about bringing you into our organization. Making sure that you do have the bench that you're talking about. I realize it's tough, but I mean, don't go pitching that you have a coding expert and then figure that you'll find them later, right? Make sure that you have the ability to reach back to these folks and will be able to deliver what you are selling when you are selling it. And those are really the big things that I look for. I mean, in small companies, like big companies, they have big benches. They usually will find somebody, right? But the folks that really can have the ability to, promise to do X, Y, and Z, and then deliver X, Y, and Z on time, or even if it isn't on time, be very straight up with me about why it isn't on time, right? So just, again, honesty and the ability to deliver, I think, are the key things that I look for in my partners.
Yeah, I think actually small companies can deliver faster in that you have a one-on-one personal relationship with the person you're working with. This is outside of cyber, but our company recently switched banks. And I love that our new bank, I have someone's phone number, their cell phone number that I can text or call them. You can't replace that. you're not going to get that necessarily with a really large firm. And so as a startup, you can say, yeah, you're going to direct our product roadmap, or you're going to help shape our next hire in a way that just might not happen at a larger company. Awesome. And Stacey, any thoughts on this? I know you've been with smaller and larger companies.
No, I agree with what Vicky said. It's show up, right? Kate said it, get into the proposal room, bring those resumes, do everything you have to do, but also don't spread yourself too thin, right? Don't go out there and, it goes back to my theme of focus, right? Don't go out there and say, I'm going to get on 20 teams, and then you're not delivering to any team. So, you have to be careful that you're not overextending yourself, and that you're really, you really are showing up and making good on your promises, right? You're building a trust with whoever you're working with. And I think that's kind of the key is, you need to build trust with your customer. You need to build trust with your partners. And so you need to think about that, showing up for them. So once you get on a team, for example, bring that key resume, get into the proposal room. The things you learn in a proposal room are amazing, right? You're going to learn all about the customer, things you didn't know. You're going to get introduced to people who have influence on what positions get picked, right? And so you're going to be able to get your company into the bid in a bigger way than maybe what your teaming agreement says, because you're the company that is there and becomes the go-to partner. And once you do that once, guess what? You're going to have a great experience with that company, and they're going to say, wow, I really like, company XYZ, and I'm going to go back to them again because they show up and they're, a clear partner. So, I think that is really, really critical. I know there are companies, if you will, that no matter where I am, I take with me, because, and people, because they're part of the company, but, because they show up, right? Because I know when I'm working with that group of people that they're being honest and upfront with me, they're telling me what they can and cannot support, and they're there and making it all happen. So I just, that's a long way to say I'm foot stomping what Vicky just said.
Yeah, I liked your last point a lot. About, you may be in a different firm in 5 or 10 years, or running your own shop or whatever, but you're going to have those relationships you've built for your whole career. I recently heard that relationships are built in lines, not dots, right? So it's the repeated interactions and trust and credibility building. Thoughts on how companies that are really early can have a long time horizon and really zoom out of, gosh, we got to make payroll in 2 weeks, to what do we have to do to build a brand and relationships that are going to be relevant and trusted for a long time. I'll direct that at Puja. I know you work with some smaller customers and larger, and you've been on both sides. So curious on your thoughts on that.
I think for that in particular, I would say that I think what happens is, for myself, when I got started, when I decided to leave Booz Allen and for my own company, I actually had the small businesses that were supporting me hire me as their consultants. And it's more because of the reputation and the service delivery that I was providing. And I think that's so important, is to have that reputation of that this person delivers. And that's what I would rather be known as. She will come there, she'll do what she has to, and she's honest with you, like you guys were saying. And I think all those things are what kind of helps you to kind of like just proceed forward in your journey, right? In your cyber, and just in any industry in particular, is just kind of really understanding everyone's needs, the market space, and delivering to that.
Yeah, and I think part of delivery too, I think the original question was, what mistakes are startups making? I think a lot of small companies go along and don't think about their back office. And that to me bleeds directly into delivery, right? If you don't have a reliable accounting, payroll, contracts, subcontracts, things of that nature. It makes it really difficult to be the good partner that Stacey was talking about, to show up and be available, because you're chasing your tail, doing all of kind of the tactical things. And so I think it's important for small businesses to press pause and be thoughtful about how they want to set up their back office so they can be successful in industry.
Right, like who's sending your invoices and are they accurate?
Exactly. Yeah.
Making
And
sure
that, and
you
that's
get paid.
that's so not the sexy stuff. I got it, but it is so important, because I've been on the other side chasing small businesses down, going, hey, where's this? Where's that in Kenya? So I think that's another element of having a good reputation, is having the back office and corporate structure to deliver on those things.
Yeah, I sit in operations and I got to tell you, it's music to my ears.
I was wondering why you had a huge Cheshire cat grin. Now
Well, it's like, I know for myself, there's so much work out there, especially with CMMC, with assessments and all. But if someone is like, hey, we know that you do assessments, like I have to be honest with them as to like, hey, it's just myself right now. I'm getting other people. I'm not going to sign up to provide you 10 folks like within a month. It's not going to happen. There's like that. I mean, I can plan for it forward, but it's not going to, you have to be practical too. You're going to fail otherwise.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about strategic partnerships, which I think is like, for small companies, sometimes heralded as this like beacon of like, if we just land a strategic partnership, everything's going to be great, right? They're going to sell our product for us. They're going to solve all our problems. We're going to just like scale rapidly, which I don't think is necessarily true, but it is really a value and scale, a value deliverer and a scaler of your impact. Let's start with Kate. How should small companies think about identifying and then building relationships with strategic partners to help them sort of be a little bigger than they are?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think maybe one of the biggest downfalls for small companies is sticking with who and what they know. Meaning, you know, I could very easily reach back and join teams of old companies or old colleagues or this or that. And those are really important, right? We have to sustain those relationships and continue to build on those relationships. But I think it's really important for small companies to kind of think big on the partnership level. You know, I think there is this misnomer that, oh, I could never get Amazon as a strategic partner. Why do they care about me? But even the big guys, if it's a symbiotic relationship where you are providing them something and they're providing you something, I have always found that if you make the phone call or knock on the door, yes, 5 might slam in your face, but there might be one that ends up being one of the most important and strategic. So I don't know, stretch to grow, I guess, is one of the things when you're thinking about partnerships. And make sure you have a long list of good partnerships, just, you know, sustained partnerships as well. So that would be my initial thought on that. Because I think small companies sell themselves short.
Anyone else have disagree strongly with Kate or agree or other thoughts?
I was just
No,
going to
I'm happy.
Oh, sorry, Vicky,
you go ahead.
you go. No,
No,
you go,
ahead.
Vicky.
No, no.
No, I was just going to say, and remember, it's a two-way street.
Yep.
Right. A partnership, you know, it's about not just, you know, what you're getting, you know, it's about what you're giving as well. And I think that's really critical, is that, you know, sometimes, I'm going to be honest, this may offend some people on this call, that, you know, smalls come in when I was with larges and are like, let me get on your team, let me get on your team, let me get on your team, let me get on your team. And it's like, great. And, you know, but what can you help me with too, right? You may have access to a customer that I would like to get access to, right? And so you build that honest, with integrity, right? Relationship. So it has to be, you know, that as you're providing things, they need to be helping you and vice versa. But I do want to put the word out there that it really needs to be a partnership, right? Because sometimes I think it doesn't come across that way, and you need to go in and think about things that way. And you build those big partnerships. And let me tell you, other smalls build partnerships with other smalls, as Kate, you know, was like, get out there, but build these really strong, trusting relationships, and don't just always ask for something. Be able to give, be able to think about what you're going to give in return. And I think that's just really critical.
Great. Vicky?
That's what I was going to say. So, I mean, it's true. It's, there, and having been small and big as well, you said it really well. If there are always people that want to be on the team, it's the people that tell me how they're going to help me win the work, and what we can start doing from a mutually beneficial business relationship long term, that I'm going to want to try to work with. So think about what you need from a partner, and think about what you can give to a partner, and then beat the street. Like you said, I mean, not everybody's going to say yes, but you have to get through a lot of no's to get to those yeses. And those yeses are what's going to translate into opportunities and success.
I think that's why I've learned to handle rejection so well, is all the no's I've gotten, right?
Thick skin. Your
It's a
skin
personal
thickens
growth
real quick.
experience on top of everything else.
Yeah, at Secura, we've built a couple strategic partnerships, and we've found success in doing what someone mentioned earlier, which is identifying the gap, not in necessarily our competitor, but in the partner. So what is the one thing they haven't figured out how to do well that we happen to do really well? Getting a little technical, we do the enforcement of technical policies. So a lot of MSPs out there can assess, can monitor, can develop a policy, but they can't actually fix the stuff on the server that's going to allow the bad guy to get in. And that's the one thing we do. So when you're able to find that you slot really nicely into one missing offering from this large vendor's portfolio, that delivers value for both sides. And it's much better for them than trying to build what we've spent the last decade building. Great. So we've talked a lot about small selling to big, government and commercial, but sometimes as a small company, you're going to sell to small, either small businesses, smaller government agencies. At Secura, we've been talking lately to a lot of state and local folks, school districts, stuff like that. So you might be one of the first cyber vendors that they're sort of interacting with at the start of their cyber journey. And you alluded to that, Puja, so we'll start with you. How do you serve those types of customers with education and helping them understand the cyber landscape and sort of know what they don't know?
Just from my experience, which has been pretty limited to just transportation per se, is to kind of just letting them know what some of the, for me, what's worked is just explaining to them what some of the external like mandates are, especially I only do work in the federal space. So just understanding like, hey, OMB is requiring you to do this, and educating them as to what that means for them. But that goes back to doing your research and understanding what their goals are, what their products are, what their strategic plans are to move forward. And so just kind of explain that in their terms, which could be like, because sometimes you're dealing with people that don't have a technical background. And a lot of people don't understand cyber. They get really scared when cyber comes in there, or especially being an auditor, like you're going to come to audit me. What does that mean? And people hate you for that. They're like, oh my God. And it shouldn't have to be that stressful, but just kind of understanding them, understanding what could be their potential issues, like in terms of what they have to comply with. I think it's important.
Yeah. Vicky, you're nodding your head. Any thoughts about that, about serving through education?
Yeah, a lot of the trust that I found that gets built over time is not necessarily is through that educational process, right? And it's so funny because when you're walking down the hall and you're the security person, people think of you as the policeman, people think of you as the cop. And that's really what you have to work very hard to do, is break down those barriers and talk about how what you do is really part of the overall business landscape, and that you're really trying to make sure that we can. I talk a lot about business continuity because people understand it, right? We talk about making sure that if something were to happen, the business can still function. And that's all about availability. And people don't care about confidentiality, availability, integrity outside of us. We're the only people that care about that. But people in the business world do care about, what if your system was unavailable for X amount of hours? Would we still be able to operate? Would you still be able to do your job? And so leading people into the understanding of the reliance upon IT, and then start having the discussions about all the different things that can cause it to not be available, whether it's a ransomware attack, whether it's the electricity goes out, whatever it is, and talk to them about, what I want to do is make sure that we have a conversation to understand and focus in on sustaining the business during these times when it might be under attack for a variety of reasons, people welcome that. They don't welcome the guy that's going to come in and, ding them on an audit or, escalate to their boss because they didn't patch the system. That's not going to be a successful approach. An education and a partnership approach really is the way to go.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. People's eyes glaze over when you start talking technical, and then you say, here's how much time I can save you, money I can save you, or how much money I can help you make. And it's like, ooh, ears perk up. This is interesting to us. Kate or Stacey, any thoughts about, I know neither of you come from particularly technical backgrounds and you're in this technical world space. How do you think about articulating value without getting lost in the nitty gritty of, what's happening in the tubes and the servers?
It's really just a matter of breaking it down to a point that everybody can digest it. I'm listening, and to your point, people glaze over if you get too technical. But if you can break it down and apply it to their daily lives and provide an example that's highly effective, and they can go, oh my gosh, that did happen, or that could happen, and make it real for them, and why such a giant word like cyber matters to them in their daily lives and their particular environment. I think that's critical. If I can understand it, I hope that other people can understand it. So, not dumb it down per se, but just make it, like I said, digestible for them to really understand how whatever we're talking about affects them in their particular environment and how we can help them in that particular way. I think, we find ourselves accepting people talking in these vast terms and 20 buzzwords. No, tell me how tomorrow it's going to help me or how it may affect me. And that shows customer intimacy at a level that, these grandiose speeches about cybersecurity and on this and that, it really breaks it down to be meaningful for the customer, which shows, like I said, intimacy in that arena, which I think goes a long way. I get you, right? So how do you talk in technical terms that show you get your customer?
So I would also say when you're thinking about talking to your customer is two things. One is research how they talk about things.
Yep.
Right. Go out there. Vicky said it, she likes it when people go look at their website. And so understand how they define terms, listen to the way, right? Go ask questions and then listen to what they're saying. So just because you believe a term should be a certain way doesn't mean that the person, cyber is one of those areas where everyone is using a lot of terms and not everyone is agreeing, in my opinion, on exactly what they mean. And so have that dialogue. I've done briefings where, maybe in the back we've put of the briefing, we've put our definitions for certain terms, right? Or we put them right up front. We've gone into briefings where we've said, okay, this is the way we think about this topic. How do you think about this topic?
Mm-hmm.
And we have that conversation first. And then we go into, these are our capabilities, because now, right, I may change my talk track based on what I'm hearing from the person across the table, right? Or on the Zoom in these cases, these days, and really think about that. So, be clear and define kind of how you're going in there before you just start trying to sell something or start trying to talk about something. So one of the, that's kind of one of the ways to get through the landscape. And, the piece of advice is really, and it's, we've all said it from the beginning, is listen. Start by listening. So many companies, I can't tell you how many companies through my career have come in and just been on project. I'm like, okay, I just sat for an hour. I didn't get to ask a question. I didn't get to talk about what I'm trying to solve. I didn't get, and then they walk out and I'm like, I'm done. I don't want that. I don't want them back. They might have said great things, but we were talking like this. And so, listen and then get to a common language, right? Try to make sure early in the conversation that you have a common language, because I think especially around cyber, it's not always the same, right? So I think that's critical.
Yeah, that leads really nicely into my next question, which is about buzzwords, right? This industry is rife with them. There's all these terms that people know enough to be dangerous, but they don't actually know what they mean, or they don't agree with on a definition. Zero trust, I'm hearing a lot, which has a real meaning, but the way it's used is pretty vague and amorphous. How should vendors think when they're trying to sell, but also just in their marketing and the language they're using? How do you think about defining terms and helping your customer, even if your customer is internal, the folks on your own team, how to define these terms really clearly and gain credibility instead of just sort of buying into this like word salad. I'll start with you, Vicky, because you're getting pitched at the most these days.
Sure. Zero trust is the word I hear the most as well. So, and it's okay that things have slightly different meanings to other people, as long as you throw out your definition early so that in the conversation, we understand what you are meaning when you say the term zero trust. And also provides me with an opportunity to, give you my thoughts on it as well. And you may want to pivot your talking points depending upon how well we agree. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, we always jump on these words that Gartner tells us are important, and then they become important because we're all using them. So it's not about that. It's all about the fundamentals, and it's about fundamental principles. And you can latch on to whatever buzzwords are out there to get people talking. But when you're really talking, talk about substance, talk about, actual things that have meaning. And everyone will ignore the fact that we don't really know what zero trust actually means.
I completely agree with that. I think we have used terms so much that they have actually become meaningless. So I would almost challenge small businesses to not jump on the buzzword train and talk actual shop, right? And have something to say that is credible as far as the actual outcomes of whatever it is you're selling, not just, well, we're all about zero trust. Well, let's hope we're all about zero trust, right? So I would love to see people move away from it, because I think it's kind of lazy, because people have the advantage of saying a buzzword and just having people just take it, for face value without challenging what that means by definition, what that means in the space, what that means to the customer. So yeah, let's use like words to explain things, not buzzwords.
I'm just going to add, help your customer, whoever it is, right, understand, provide sources for learning. One of the other thing is go in, and if you're having a conversation and you're talking like this, maybe, provide them the link to some information or some articles. I have found that helpful too, right? Someone says, Stacey, go get smart on this, and they help me go get smart on that, right? They don't just say, hey, here's the buzzword, go, since zero trust seems to be the word of the day today, go read on zero trust. And then I'm searching the internet, trying to find, all the best articles, and, a bunch of stuff that I don't want to read comes up, and someone who sends me something very meaningful that is, zero trust for dummies or something, comes up. That's super helpful to me, right? You've just made, again, that partnership, you've just made my life really easy. You're educating me. You provided sources for me. I'm going to want to go back to you. So, you're helping me think about this problem in a way, and, you're making it easy on me. So, provide the sources that you have, that you're learning from, as well, because we all need that, right? The market, everything, IT, everything, it's all changing so quickly that it's hard, to sometimes to keep up. And so if someone kind of helps me there, again, that builds that trusting relationship, and I want to work with those folks.
Yeah. Puja, any thoughts on that?
Oh, sorry. I totally agree. So zero trust was one of those words that I was kind of like, okay, why? I'm kind of tired of hearing it. So then I went to when I was studying for my CISSP exam, so I went through all my books, and there's like a 1-paragraph thing about zero trust. That's it. So I'm like, okay, this is really important. And it never came across any of my exams and all. And so I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Like, we're stressing zero trust, but what does it mean? Right. So just going back to the whole definition, and then hearing that, like, I know some of my clients, they have strategies that they're putting forward about implementing zero trust. And I'm like, okay, why? What does that mean to you?
Right. And how do you get at it without, reading the executive order from President Biden, which is why it's such a fuzzy thing. I think that at Secura, we kind of sell both into security and into engineering. And one thing that we found is valuable is helping those two buyers, those two departments understand each other. So how can we educate security about what their IT colleagues care about so that they sound smart when they meet about this product? Or how do we educate IT about, okay, your CISO is the one who has to get the budget for this. Here's what to tell him or her so that you actually get the budget you want to buy our product. We've convinced you it'll make your life better, but here's how to communicate with someone in a different section. So there's some internal education as well to move things along. Actually, I just saw a question pop up in the Q&A that I think is relevant to that, which is, so we've talked a lot about pursuing deals. Can you share a time that you had closed a deal and then it started to go sideways and you had to save it? Or just more broadly, how you think about that. So someone's interested, they've got the budget, but right now, oops, something bad happened. How do you think about saving that to preserve your reputation and your relationship?
I mean, so it's hard work, right? It's just getting in there and doing the hard work. Your customer might be changing their mind. Sometimes I'm gonna be honest, you're gonna have to say that deal's going away and there is nothing I can do to save it. And I am wasting my time and my energy and my company's resources on trying to make something out of what is turning into nothing. And that's a very hard conversation to have with yourself, right? When you kind of depended or you're thinking you're depending on that. But the flip side to that is if you think it's salvageable, it's getting in there, right? And bringing that understanding, again, listening to why is this deal going south, right? What is happening to this deal? Going out there and so not trying, sometimes, not trying to turn the deal into what you want it to be, because the reason the deal is changing is it's changing. And so you have to sometimes get on board with that change. And so you have to change sometimes your approach to what you thought was going to happen. And so you can't try to square peg round hole it sometimes, but I was going to bring you this. And it's like, well, the customer, has kind of moved it over a little bit. And so you need to move with it. So, it's getting in there, talking to the customer, spending a lot of time with whoever is buying your services, if you will, or your solution, and really understanding what they're doing and then adjusting kind of to that new reality. And if you don't adjust to the new reality, that deal is just, whatever it is going to continue to slip away from you.
Yeah, and I think on top of it too, we've talked a lot about trust amongst our customers and our partners, and this is a great opportunity to be transparent. I think a lot of times we don't want to admit failure, or we don't want to bring bad news to our customers, but it's really important to go, hey, customer, this is not going well. And so either I need to, or I'm going to, or can you help me with? I think those are really important conversations to have. And, theoretically, they could be scary, right? Oh, I don't want to disappoint my customer. But at the end of the day, I do think it's the most beneficial to just state where you are, come up with how you're going to solve it, and ask for help if the customer can help you get there. But transparency, especially at the beginning, I think is the most important thing that you can do.
Anything to add, Vicky or Puja, on that? No.
Spot on there.
Mhm. Great. Oh, go ahead, Puja. Anything? No.
Oh, no, I total agreement. Transparency is very important. Yeah.
But I wouldn't know because I've never had anything go sideways in my entire career. So I'm just shooting from the hip here.
If something maybe one day did, for no fault of
I
your
am
own.
totally kidding.
Great. Well, okay, I have two more questions and I'm going to have everyone answer them. These are a little rapid fire. The first one is, and some of you have mentioned things, I'm especially excited about Kate's mention of back office and the importance of operations, but what are people not thinking about in this cyber landscape? And this can be technological, this can be phenomenon, this can be culture, whatever. What are people not thinking about in cyber that they should be, and they should be paying more attention now because it's going to be a big problem in the next, 3 to 24 months?
So,
Go
Can I hop in on that? So I'm going to go, I may take this question in a slightly different direction. So sorry if I do that. And I am not a technologist, but I've been thinking about this for months. And then if any of you guys saw Sunday's Washington Post, the business section on the cover of that was called Quantum Internet is Just in Your Closet. And if you haven't read that article, I suggest you do. But, you know, every 3 years, you mentioned it, you know, there are new terms, right? There's cyber, there's AI, there's machine learning, and quantum is kind of the new term, and it's going to be changing everything. And this is something I've been thinking about for months now. The customers are really putting a lot of money. So we're talking about niche capabilities. You know, they're putting a lot of money, if you go look now, into quantum and how it's going to change kind of the cyber landscape, right? Forever. And so, you know, it's just something I think people should start thinking about, because I think the market's kind of blow up in that area. And if you can be, you know, there are obviously some companies working on this, but one of the first to market in this area, you know, I think there's going to be real opportunity, because they're looking for, excuse me, you know, quantum physicists, quantum, you know, technologists right now. And this is a really hard problem, but when it comes, it's going to come in a big way. And, you know, whichever country can solve this problem first is going to own, if you will, the cyber market. So I know I kind of took this in a different direction, but that in cyber is what I've been thinking about, and actually getting, you know, not just the article, and I'm not a technologist, so no questions about quantum, but my son just took a quantum class, and so he talks to me in my ear, but I have been spending a little bit of time looking at what our customers are doing in that area and thinking about, you know, how do you grow business in the quantum area. So
Right.
Yeah, I
let's
think that's a
segue
big
into-
one.
Go ahead, Vicky.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. And the other thing that we're looking at right now, and I think folks can really figure out how to deliver some value in the next few years on robotic process automation. So getting the ability to take routine tasks and small things that people do, let's say 20 times a day, and having some automated process do it, is going to be how we get people out of doing small tasks and doing bigger things. And that's huge value for businesses. So, and I'm talking small businesses, medium business, large businesses. It's a big technology gap right now. And there are a couple of players out there that are really starting to get into organizations where we're doing some evaluations right now. So I think that's going to be a big one as well, but quantum for sure.
Puja, what are you thinking about these days that no one else is?
So I think for myself, I had my first experience actually going back into a physical office, and just, you know, understanding that whole culture, and now this whole change from eliminating passwords completely and just completely moving towards like biometrics and stuff. And for me, biometrics has always failed. It's never worked. I mean, retina scanning is probably the only thing that probably could work for me. But even then, I mean, but that's expensive to implement. So just, you know, trying to understand, like, I mean, how that's going to actually play out is this whole transition into being passwordless.
Okay, we've got 3 very technical topics that I'm going to have to go do some Googling about. Bring us home, Kate, with something I can understand.
Yeah, I'm going to bow out on this question because I don't even know how to spell quantum. So I don't think I have a whole lot to add in this arena. But the one thing I think I can add, if we're talking about these major shifts in how we're approaching business with our customers, you know, I know Intel in particular, and that's kind of where my bread and butter is. You know, these ideas are wonderful, but how do we help a customer that is so closed for good reason implement some of these things in a thoughtful way? So yes, maybe next year quantum is going to be the next thing, but is the agency first able, right? Are our customers able to implement some of these things? And B, how do you kind of incrementally set them up for these futuristic things? Because we all know, at least in the government world, things move at a snail's pace at best. Right. So this is not going to be by 2024, it's all quantum all day, because they're just not set up for that. But definitely thinking about those things, keeping them in mind, and getting somebody much smarter on the subject than me to talk to the customers about how they can prepare for it, I think is where my mind goes when I start hearing what's next, what's new, and how things are quote unquote going to be in 23, 24. Because like I said, I think there's a latency depending on who your customer is in getting these things in there and working properly. Because the other mistake is you kind of shoehorn it in there, come hell or high water, and it fails. So.
Great. Awesome. Okay, our last question, I'm going to limit to one sentence each. What is the term or topic you are ready to never hear about again? We're going to retire it in 2022. It's going to delete automatically if you type it. My answer for this, I'll start, is agentless, because it doesn't mean anything. No one would ever buy software that doesn't do anything on your system. So asking for agentless software is a misunderstanding of why you pay for software. Puja, what about you?
I think the term hacking, like hackers, I think that term has to change. And I think using this term like cyber criminals, things like that gets too harsh. But I think that has to kind of move away from there. Like we have to move away from that. That's something from so many years ago, and it has a totally different definition than what's being used for now. So
Great. Stacey?
So no matter whether we're talking about cyber or anything else, the term I least like in my life is LPTA. And I hope I never hear that term again. Low price, technically acceptable, right? I want our customers to choose not on price. I mean, obviously price has to be a consideration, but I want best value to truly mean the best value. And so I would love if we could strike LPTA from our customers' language so that it won't be in our language.
Talk about lowering the bar, right, Stacey?
Yeah.
You're technically acceptable, so that's good enough.
Right.
That is not hopeful about their cyber posture, if that's the standard we're reaching for. What about you, Vicky?
I would like to retire this, and I've wanted to retire this for over a decade. I never want to hear the word synergy ever again.
I applaud you.
Yeah. Okay, and finally, Kate.
Oh, I have so many. I don't know which one to pick. But I guess from a technical perspective, because I feel like this is, the thread we're on, disruptive technology. That is one of my least favorites, especially in my world. My customers don't want to be disruptive. So it's kind of counterintuitive to say, I'm going to blow all this up and be so disruptive and you won't even recognize it. It really bugs me. And I hear people use it, in front of customers. And I'm like, don't do it. They don't. Mission continuity. Talk about that. Don't talk about disruption. So
Literally.
I would love to retire disruptive technologies. And then on a personal front, Arianne, we were laughing about this. Ping. We're not on a submarine. Like, come on, just call me.
Great. Yeah, I think sync is a term that I'm not going to allow anyone I deal with to use.
Yeah.
Like, we can just meet. We don't have to sync. So awesome. Well, thanks everyone for such a great discussion. Hope for our attendees, you got some value out of this, learning what buyers are thinking about, what enterprises and large government buyers are thinking about, how you can avoid distractions, avoid the temptation to be everything to everyone, and really focusing on the value you're delivering to be not just a lowest price, technically acceptable, but to be a real value deliverer in the cyberspace. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of Cyber Week, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks
Thanks
Arianne.
everyone.
Thanks. Take care.